Let's start a new lesson, lesson 2. Patterns of waves or the types of waves. Okay, go to page, please. Page 118. Page 118, please. This page, page 118. Patterns in wave characteristics. As we learned in the previous lesson, in lesson 1, that waves can be described there are many properties of waves or characteristics. The frequency, the amplitude, the wavelength, the amplitude and wavelength. All of these are characteristics of waves. Okay? All of these are characteristics of waves or properties of waves. And they follow a pattern. They follow a pattern that, as you remember, that the waves follow a pattern. Okay. Fine. This means, okay, good morning, Lana. Good morning, Lana. Okay. This means that they repeat. When we say that waves or wave characteristics follow a pattern, that means they repeat and they can be predicted. Okay? So, in general, waves have a characteristics like frequency, amplitude, wavelength, and these characteristics follow a pattern because they repeat. They repeat in any wave. Wait, Yusuf. These characteristics repeat themselves and they can be predicted. So we can predict them. Right. If you can observe the properties of part of a wave, you can figure out what the rest of the wave is doing. That this is the meaning of the predicted. الرأس الرابع. اوكي الرابع الدولي. في عندهم غيابات طبعا. ثلاث. والله please wait. Please wait.
كان عندهم غياب.
كان في هيستند جدولي اذا بدك تشوف.
لا شوف. كان عندهم غياب.
كان في والله في 5.
5
6 بس. I'm sorry. طيب. We can predict. If you can observe the properties of part of a wave, you can figure out what the rest of the wave is doing. This is the meaning of that you can predict. Don't worry about this. One important pattern in waves is that they can oscillate. Okay. What is the meaning of oscillate? All waves. ليش هيك يا عبود؟ okay. All waves, one important properties or pattern in waves that they can oscillate. Look at this. Look here, please. When you say that something is oscillate, بالعربي معناه يعني يتذبذب. إشي go back and forth. Look at this. It go back and forth. This is the meaning of oscillate, like this. Look. So, when we say that something oscillate, One important pattern in waves, all waves, they can oscillate. What is the meaning of this word? That when an object oscillates, it moves back and forth between 2 points, like the swing you can see here. Again, when we say that something oscillates, when an object oscillates, it means that it goes back and forth between 2 points, like this. Look here. This is oscillation. It's called oscillation. When an object oscillates, it moves back and forth between 2 points, like the swing, here. زي لما بتتمرجح. طيب. Wait, عبود. طيب. All waves that can oscillate. When an object oscillates, it moves back and forth between 2 points, like the swing that you see here in this page. Some other objects that oscillate are pendulums. Okay, pendulums. Okay, there is a tool. It's called pendulum, like Newton's. If you remember in Unit 1, Newton's tool that we will talk about in Unit 1, if you remember. طيب. Rocking chair. الكرسي اللي بيتحرك بيضل رايح جاي. الكرسي اللي بيتحرك هذا اسمه rocking chair. It is an example of objects that oscillating. Swing is also an example of object that is oscillating. So all waves have an oscillating pattern. All objects have one important pattern in waves, that they can oscillate or move back and forth between 2 points. Right. What is a wave period? Another important characteristics or another important property of waves is the wave period. Wave period means the time for the wave, the time it takes to complete one wave. This is the meaning of the wave period. يعني مدة الموجة is the amount of time it takes for a wave to complete one back and forth motion. Again, the wave period is the amount of time it takes for a wave to complete one back and forth motion. Look at this swing, for example. Look here. The time it takes for this swing, for example, to complete one back and forth movement is called wave period. Yani the time from this point to this point is called wave period. Fine. Stop chatting, please. صفحة, page. This is page 118. طيب, again. All waves have characteristics like the frequency, the amplitude, the wavelength. Okay? These characteristics follow a pattern. Okay, so since they follow a pattern, they repeat themselves. And any wave has a frequency, amplitude, and wavelength. These waves are, or these properties are always repeated. So we can predict them. So what is the meaning that you can predict them? If you can observe the properties of part of a wave, you can figure out what the rest of the wave is doing. So waves are always moving in a pattern. Fine. One important pattern of all waves is that they can oscillate. Okay, this is one important pattern of all waves. So even light waves, sound waves, water waves, all of them have an important pattern, something in common, that they can oscillate. What is the meaning of oscillate? That when an object oscillates, it moves back and forth between 2 points. And always remember, when you hear this word, always remember this word, oscillate. To understand it, remember the swing. Remember the swing. All waves oscillate like the swing, back and forth, like this. Okay? طيب. Some other objects that oscillate are like the rocking chairs, الكرسي المتحرك اللي بروح بضل رايح جاي, and the pendulums, البندول اسمه بالعربي. طيب. Now, another important characteristic or property of waves is the wave period. The wave period is the time of the period of the wave. Okay? The wave period, the time for the period. يعني وقت قديش تستغرق الموجة، زمن الموجة. هيك معنى wave period. A wave period is the amount of time it takes for a wave to complete one back and forth motion. Okay? يعني in another word, the time for one wave to complete. The time it takes for one wave to complete. As you know that one wave is made up of a complete back and forth motion. So the amount of time it takes for a wave to complete one back and forth motion is called wave period. Wave period. طيب. Do you have any questions till now or any comments? طيب عبود استنى شوي بالله اذا سمحتوا بليز نعم احكي بس واحد خلينا نسمع لعبود باقي يستمع. If you have any questions or any comments, I will give you the chance. اللي عنده اي سؤال او تعليق راح اعطيه الفرصه بس يلا ما تخلوني دائما يعني يا ريت بتمنى نصير اقدر اخليكم فاتح المايكس خليكم فاتحين المايكس ونتصرف كأننا كبار بليز. عبود تفضل.
طب استاذ خلي هلا المايك تبعنا مفتوح.
طب ماشي بس بتصير تحكوا بتعملوا ازعاج. خلينا نسمع لعبود اول شيء. تفضل عبود. Do you have any question?
استاذ لا ما بنحكيش.
ايش يا عبود ايش بدك؟
خلي المايك تبعنا يكون مفتوح.
طيب نشوف حسب الازعاج. مين عنده؟ خالد عندك سؤال؟ Do you have any question?
No teacher.
طيب is it clear till now?
Teacher, I don't understand.
Okay عمر. Okay طيب. Natalie, do you have any comments?
Me?
Or any questions?
No, thank you.
طيب. أرام.
Nothing.
طيب محمد وهادية.
We don't have a question.
Okay. طيب عمر. Okay عمر. Listen to me please. Okay, patterns again, the patterns in waves, in wave characteristics. The waves have a repeating pattern, as I told you. Type. All waves have characteristics. We can describe any type of wave in wave, any type of waves. Even they are light waves, sound waves, ocean waves, they have the same characteristics in general. Yani they have a common characteristics that like the frequency. All waves have a frequency. A frequency, if you remember the amount of repetitions, the repetitions of wave, how many repetitions? The amplitude, it is the height, the greatest height of the. By the way, I forgot to ask you a question. Did you watch the video? Did you watch it? You can talk, I think. طيب. Did you watch the video that I sent you yesterday?
Yeah.
طيب.
Yes.
How did you find
I
it?
know. I didn't.
It's so nice.
استنى شوي واحد يحكي. يعني
I
I don't
didn't.
mean
Nice.
it is nice or not. I mean, do you think or do you feel that it helped you to understand the waves?
Yeah. I will watch it. I will watch it today.
Yes, please watch it more than one time. It's better to watch it more than one time. Right. Okay.
I really like the video, so I'm watching this on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Aman.
أنا عادي بس أنا جاوبت بس أنا عادي.
Okay. So these waves or these characteristics, the amplitude, the frequency, the wavelength are they repeat, and they can be predicted. Type. Okay. All waves have something in common. All waves have something in common that they can oscillate. What is the meaning of oscillate? Always remember the swing. They move back and forth between 2 points. This is the meaning of oscillation. When an object oscillates, it moves back and forth between 2 points. This is the meaning of oscillation, like a swing. Right. Also, there are other objects that can oscillate, like the rocking chair, for example, or pendulums. Right. Now, one important thing about waves, or another important characteristics of waves, is the wave period. The wave period is the time. Yani simply, you can identify it. It's the time of the wave, the amount of time that is needed, the amount of time it takes for the wave to complete one back and forth motion. Okay, this is the meaning of wave period. Let's talk about another thing or another idea in this lesson. Fine. Now, some wave patterns depend on each other. There are 2 patterns of waves, by the way. Look at this figure, or look at this page. There are some waves move in a circular pattern. Some waves move in a plane patterns. We call them plane waves. So there are circular waves and plane waves. Look here, please. This is an example of circular wave. By just look here, if you look at this, you can understand what is the meaning of circular wave. They move in a circular pattern, okay, in circles. And the other pattern is called line wave, okay? They move like stripes, okay? These are lines. So waves, some waves can move in a circular way, a pattern like this. And some of them move in lines. They are called line waves or plane waves. Fine. Inshallah, this is just in general. I will talk about them in more details. Fine. Some wave patterns depend on each other. Remember that waves with, okay. If you remember, I told you in the previous lessons that waves with higher frequencies have shorter wavelength. And the opposite is true. Waves with low frequency have a higher wavelength or longer wavelength, like this. Look, the patterns of waves or the characteristics of waves depend on each other. Waves with high frequency have shorter wavelength, like this. Type. Do you remember this exercise? Do you remember this exercise? Look at the waves in blue. As I told you that they have, waves in blue have higher frequency. Look at the wavelength of these waves. This is the wavelength. These waves in blue have higher frequency, so they have a short wavelength. Compare them with waves in red. Look at the waves in red, they have a low frequency, so they have a longer wavelength. Okay, look here again. Waves with higher frequency have what? Waves with higher frequency have short wavelengths, like this. Look here. Waves with high frequency have short wavelength. But waves with low frequency have longer wavelength. Is it clear? So the properties of waves or the patterns of waves depend on each other. Waves with higher frequency like this have short wavelength, but waves with low frequency means what? I want to summarize it for you like this. High frequency means short wavelength. But, okay, low frequency means long wavelength. Like this. Always remember this figure. Always remember here this figure. The waves in blue have more frequency, so they are shorter. The wavelength is, they have a short wavelength. But waves in red, the waves in red have low frequency, so they have a longer or their wavelength is long or longer. Okay, fine. Is this point clear? I want establish. Why wait? Which page? 119. Okay. Back to page 118. So some wave patterns depend on each other. Again, some wave patterns depend on each other, like frequency and wavelength. Remember that high frequency means shorter wavelength. This makes sense because waves that occur less often have crests that are farther apart. This means that they are less frequent than waves that have a shorter wavelength. Again, some waves or wave patterns or wave characteristics depend on each other, like what? The wavelength and the frequency. Frequency and wavelength. Always remember that wavelength and the frequency are opposite to each other. If we have high frequency, we have short wavelength. If we have low frequency, we have long wavelength. So they are opposite to each other. Remember that waves with high frequencies have shorter wavelength. High frequency means shorter wavelength. Okay, fine. This makes sense because waves that occur less or have less frequency have crests that are farther apart. This means that they are less frequent than waves that have shorter wavelength. Fine. We have a few minutes. خلصت الحصة بس ضل في few minutes. طيب, do you have any questions?
No.
Is this point clear?
No.
طلع.
Yes.
Is,
Everything is clear.
can you understand the relationship between frequency and wavelength?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waves with high frequency have shorter wavelength. Okay? طيب. لا ما بدي الصوت هذا بليز. ما بدي الصوت هذا. طيب.
I understand. Okay. Teacher.
طيب.
Teacher.
ايش who's talking؟ ملك؟
Me, Malak, yeah.
يلا.
Teacher, will be repeat tomorrow.
Yes. Don't worry. طيب, goodbye from now. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you inshallah tomorrow. See you.
Bye.
Tomorrow. Goodbye.